Hello friends, first of all thank you very much for giving warm reception to my videos till date that I have uploaded. I am really humbled and overwhelmed at the same time. And before I begin my lecture today, it is my humble request to you all that please give your blessings and your support, and if you like the video, please subscribe to my YouTube channel so that I can create more videos. I get more inspiration. I get the feeling that you're liking my videos, and thank you in advance for your kind support and cooperation. Today I will talk about absurd theater. Now, before I talk about absurd theater, let us just understand what exactly absurd means. Absurd is a term which is used originally to describe the violations of rules of logic, and it has acquired a very wide and diverse connotations in modern arts, literature, philosophy and theology. The absurd indicates man's failure or the failure of traditional values to fulfill man's emotional desires and spiritual needs. If we go by the term absurd was first used by the Danish philosopher. In modern implications, it was used by the Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard, who rebelled against the Hegelian ideals. Now, before we understand absurdism, it is very necessary for us to understand existentialism, because existentialism paved the way for absurdism. So what exactly is existentialism? Existentialism developed in European countries such as France and Germany and focused on the meaninglessness of human existence. That is what existentialism meant. Now, the famous philosophers who were associated with existentialism is led by Jean-Paul Sartre, who is considered to be the founder of existentialism, and he said that there is an apparent pointlessness in man's life. He spoke of non-being or nothingness. Sartre was followed by Albert Camus, who expressed that the disparity between man's intention and the reality repeatedly checkmates the individual. And in Gabriel Marcel's view, absurd is the symbol of fundamental mystery of human existence. Absurdism, or absurd in the concept in art, literature, arose due to many factors. The first factor was industrialization. And what happened in industrialization? The first thing that happened was, in industrialization, there was a sudden acceleration of technical development in Britain and other European countries. And what exactly industrialization did was, industrialization transferred the balance of political power from the landowner to the industrial capitalist, which as a result created an urban industrial working class. So we can say that industrialization created urbanization. That is point number one. Now, what happened in urbanization? Village workers, they migrated from their respective villages to cities in search of good life, beautiful life, but their migrating from villages to cities created a population explosion. It created an imbalance. This mass exodus led to existential problems. Why? Because there was new problems in towns, as there was lack of food, lack of human health, sanitation, lack of jobs, lack of houses, lack of hygiene. All these created to existential problems. And overpopulation, of course, population explosion, overpopulation gave way of problems of how to survive. This is point number one. Point number two, Charles Darwin's founding of modern theory of evolution and natural selection. Previously, it was believed that there is God, there is man, and there is animal. So it is the man who is the center point of contact by God. So man is superior than animals. But this point was completely put to base by Charles Darwin's concept, and he clearly established the fact that, hey, human beings, your ancestors were apes. So the DNAs that you have are from apes, animals' DNAs. And number third point was we are talking about the points of absurdism that resulted in art and literature. So the third point was the great world wars, World War I and World War II. And this great world wars created, led to the death of thousands, millions of people, and there was huge loss of natural resources, countries' assets. And we should not forget here the dropping of the atom bomb in Hiroshima and Nagasaki also played a very significant role, where now human beings understood that it just takes a bomb to finish the entire lot of population, which was not the case before. And all these reasons, such as industrialization, Marx's exodus of people from villages to cities, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, the world wars, what happened? All these things it led to man's isolation, it led to man's loneliness, it led to man's frustration, dread and anger. Now, all these things resulted in the development of existentialism. Now, existentialism as a philosophical trend arose after the World War II. And what did they do? What did existentialists stress upon? Existentialism stressed upon absurdity of the universe, and this absurdity caused anxiety, of course, freeing man. And existentialism saw freedom of choice as the most important fact of human existence. Now, who were the prominent existential philosophers? The first was Jean-Paul Sartre, the second was Martin Heidegger, the third Karl Jaspers, and fourth Gabriel Marcel. Now, absurd arose out of all these forces. Which are the forces? Industrialization, growth of science and technology, evil consequences of the two world wars, existential philosophy, and the resultant loss of faith. Now, in the evolution of a new vision in relation to himself, society, biological environment and the universe, one notices a large number of cross-fertilizing influences. So these cross-fertilizing influences from different stratas crisscrossing one another resulted in this sense of loneliness, resulted in this sense of meaninglessness, pointlessness. In 1942, Albert Camus put the question why man should not commit suicide as his life is meaningless. So why did he say that? He believed that there was an escape in suicide. And in his work, The Myth of Sisyphus, in his famous monumental work, The Myth of Sisyphus, which was published in 1955, Albert Camus tried to diagnose the human situation in a world which is devoid of any purpose. Now, absurd, again, if we go into the meaning, it means out of harmony in music. The dictionary definition says that absurd is out of harmony with reason or property, incongruous, unreasonable, illogical. Now, its common uses, absurd may simply mean ridiculous. The common uses, absurd, when you say, this is absurd, this is ridiculous. No, we cannot take this meaning when we talk of theatre of the absurd, and nor did Albert Camus meant by this meaning called ridiculous with the word absurd. Why did we talk of existentialism? Because absurd involves, the word absurd, when we talk from the theatre of the absurd point of view, the word absurd involves existential thinkers, nothingness, angst and dread. Now, for Camus, feeling of absurdity springs from the confrontation. What is the confrontation? Between man's consciousness, his conscience, his thirst for rationality, and the inert, irrational, unknowable world. Now, the term theatre of the absurd, when you talk of theatre of the absurd, was coined by Martin Esslin, who wrote a book called The Theatre of the Absurd in 1961. Now, broadly speaking, it can be applied to a number of works in drama and prose which suggest that the human condition is essentially absurd. Now, when we talk of absurdism, the literature as such has its roots also in the fiction of Frank Kafka's famous work, The Trial and the Metamorphosis. Now, the theatre of the absurd is said to be a reflection of the attitude of the modern West Europeans. The earlier optimism and dynamism of Western Europe gave way to doubts and disputations. Traditional religion began to lose its grip. Philosophical schools and cults were held as ultimate solutions at one time, and soon they also came to a shattering end. The dominance of Western Europe was now a complete myth or an illusion. Now, according to Martin Esslin, theatre of the absurd devalues the form, the style, the language. Symbols are used instead, and language takes a secondary role here. For example, if you look into Samuel Beckett's famous play Waiting for Godot, in Waiting for Godot, what do we see? Often sentences are of single words. Now, people in Ionesco's play, The Chairs, they speak to an ever-growing number of empty chairs. So, the theatre of the absurd thus is a part of the anti-literary movement of our time, which has found its expression in abstract painting, with its rejection of literary elements in picture or in new novel in France, with its reliance on the description of objects and its rejection of empathy and anthropomorphism. So, anthropomorphism's rejection and empathy is also one. Now, theatre of the absurd was influenced by some of the very famous movements. You can research more on it, or I can, I will upload, if I get time, I will definitely upload something on it. There were some movements which directly or indirectly affected theatre of the absurd. In my opinion, these are the movements which influence theatre of the absurd. Who are they? One is Commedia dell'arte. We also pronounce it as Commedia dell'arte. The second is Expressionism, the third is Dadaism, the fourth is Surrealism, and of course the silent film comedy such as that of Charlie Chaplin. And the most famous names associated with the theatre of the absurd are, some of the famous names are Arthur Adamov, Fernando Arrabal, Samuel Beckett, Eugene Ionesco, Jean Genet, Gunter Grass, Edward Albee, Harold Pinter, Tom Stoppard, to name a few. These are the famous names which are associated with absurd theatre. Now, what are the famous the characteristics or features of absurdist writings? I would also like to say something on it. Common features. One is they are very naive and inept characters they present. Second is they present a very fantastic or nightmarish world. There is always playing out of this tragic farce, and most of the events are very comic, horrifying or absurd. So this was just an outline, dear friends. This is not everything about absurd, but yeah, if you have paucity of time, this is just an outline of theatre of the absurd, and I hope I have been able to clear out some doubts about absurdism. We can have more discussions. And thank you once again. If you feel this video has helped you in some way or the other, please do subscribe my channel. That will mean a lot to me, and I will look forward for your valuable time in the near future. Thank you all for your kind support that you are giving to my channel. Thank you all for sparing your valuable time and looking into my videos and giving valuable comments. It means a lot to me. I have opened this channel with some objectives, and I can see some of the objectives being fulfilled already. I cannot thank you. I can just say that thank you from the core of my heart for your immense support that you are giving, and looking forward for such support in the near future too. Please do subscribe my channel if you like my video. Thank you very much.